Welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and we are back in Clubhouse 5 just off of Leicester Square, an ace place to watch your sports. I thought I threw the word ace in there this morning.
That's the tagline you came up with.
I just came up with that there.
You should charge for
an
that.
An ace place to watch your sports. I don't know whether it's good or not. Patrick Van Straat and Zach Jalabra in the building. I was going to wear my Messi shirt today as well. I've got a very similar one, in fact the same one but in white, so lucky I didn't.
I was actually thinking that earlier today, but I had already worn it, so I thought you'd be the person to not wear it. It is what it is. You do get people give you lots of stares when you wear this. Though I was coming in today and I just saw people staring at me on the train, and I was like, they must think that I'm like 12 years old, just absolutely obsessed with Messi, and they're right.
Pat, where's your Messi shirt?
I don't have a Messi shirt. Well, I do have a lot of Messi shirts because I have a child. But I don't. I have like 2 football shirts in my life, and they're both at the back of a cupboard. I got that Belgium one from the World Cup.
Do you still have the Roma one that you got cream pied in?
Oh,
let's rephrase that. I do also have a Netherlands shirt with 21 on that a friend gave me for my 21st birthday, but I don't wear football shirts. I don't enjoy the feel of man-made fabrics against my skin.
Deary me, let's move quickly on away from these subjects and address the main talk point from today. As you can see in the title, today we're talking about players that need to be saved at their current club. You know, there's lots of talk, isn't there, this week about Jadon Sancho. Get him out of Manchester United, people were saying online, and get him to a new club. But we thought we'd talk about players maybe they're a bit underappreciated, one way of looking at it, or need to be taken out of their club and given a fresh breath of life. Is that a phrase? Probably not.
It's fine.
Anyway, we're going to be creating 11 today. We're going to go through position by position, have a little bit of debate over each one. Start with goalkeepers then.
Yes. Yeah. I don't mind kicking things off. We go to Real Madrid, and I think Andre Lunin will be feeling a little bit miffed off, really, when he saw
phrase we've made up today.
Kepa Arrizabalaga come in and take the kind of number 1 shot. Obviously, Thibaut Courtois got that long-term injury, and that might have been his chance to try and get some minutes. This is somebody who's still only 24 years old and was considered kind of like a wonder kid, one for the future. And I think a lot of Real Madrid fans, I was speaking to one yesterday, and he was saying that he's maybe not turned into the exceptional goalkeeper just yet, that they've had high expectations for when he first joined. However, he's barely played, especially since being at Real Madrid. His last time where he played a decent amount, or got a decent amount of minutes, was when he went on loan back in 2020, and since then it's just been the kind of sub-goalkeeper. He joined them back in 2018. And I think for him, he can be quite annoyed, or I think he can feel like he can deserve a little bit more game time, having been there for so long, and then with that Courtois injury, you would have thought, oh, now this is my chance. This is my chance to try and prove. And instead, Real Madrid went out there and got another keeper who isn't necessarily the strongest in that position. So I think if Real Madrid fans are sitting here going, oh, well, we went and got Kepa Arrizabalaga to take those minutes. Well, I think Lunin can sit there and go, I've not been given a chance here. And you went and gave these kind of minutes that I could have to a keeper who isn't one of the best in the world.
He's in the unfortunate situation though where he is like stuck behind, Courtois, who is basically just immense for them.
This is what I mean though. Courtois injured for the season. Courtois injured for the season. And if there was a time to give him the minutes, it would have been this year. And maybe that might still happen if Kepa has a bit of a down period at Real Madrid, which due to track history, that is quite possible.
Very possible.
But he is at that age now, 24 years old. He's obviously joined them since 2018. He does need to maybe start thinking about, okay, is Real Madrid the club where I'm going to be playing my football, or am I happy just being a bench keeper? And maybe his answer to that is yes, but this is somebody that was highly rated just a couple of years ago, and I don't think we've heard of really for a couple of seasons now.
Okay, so a mixture of the between saved and underappreciated there, certainly by the club. Pat?
Well, I was kind of thinking along the same lines, and I thought about, Alexander Nubel, who I really think should have gone back to Bayern and been like their starting keeper maybe this season. I don't think that would have been worse than like scouting around for a different option. I think that should have been their first choice, because he's been great in Monaco last couple of years. I think he's still like youngish. Like he's definitely somebody who I want to see playing like top class football for a top class team. But they've always been loath to give him those chances. However, in the end, I've taken more of the underappreciated angle than the needs to be saved angle, because let's be honest, it's pretty rare for a club to have 2 quality goalkeepers and for both those goalkeepers to be kind of peak age or pre-peak. Like you look at Palace, they've signed Dean Henderson. Guaita's been immense for them, but Guaita's 35.
Yeah, he's been let go now as well, I think, Guaita. I think he's just been released.
Which I do think is like, I can understand it given his age, but I think it's really underrated what he's been for them the last couple of years. So a guy I want to talk about a little bit, because I think he's been unappreciated his whole career, is Anthony Lopez at Lyon. He's 32 now. And there was a time when...
He's been around forever.
I thought he was going to be the next great keeper out of France. And to be honest, he's been exceptionally consistent there. I mean, he's had a save rate above 70% since 2015-16, which is fairly remarkable. He's overperformed versus expected goals, I think, in 4 of the last 6 years. He's only got 14 caps for Portugal because, you know, for a long time he was behind Rui Patricio, and they just have never really kind of wanted to give him a shot, even though I think for a long time he was the best Portuguese goalkeeper around. But I never really rated Patricio. I don't know. I just think that he's somebody who should have got his move out of France to like a mid-table Premier League side, and I think he'd have been a great goalkeeper. And instead, I don't know. I just find it a little bit sad that he spent his whole career there and nobody really talks about him, and now he's approaching the end of his career. I also think you could put Bernd Leno in this category. Bernd Leno, I think, was great for Arsenal. He was sensational for Fulham last year.
Amazing.
But it's probably the second best keeper in the league last season to Alisson, like at least in terms of kind of overperforming versus expected goals. But I'm not necessarily arguing these guys need to be saved. They're both at good clubs. They've had good careers. I just think that people talk about them as if they're just like replacement level keepers, and they're not. They're significantly better than that.
Yeah, I mean, as we go through this, we want you guys at home to comment saying who you think won or who you would pick in that position, I guess, as we go. I'm going for a player that I think needs to be saved. I don't think this is a player that's been underappreciated. I think he is very much appreciated by the fan base. I'm going for Jordan Pickford, who I think has been performing above and beyond the level of Everton for a consistent amount of time now, and I just don't see Everton getting better, sadly, as a side right now. I think Jordan Pickford is a goalkeeper that should be playing in Europe. I really do. And, you know, last 2 finishes, 16th, 17th for Everton, that could easily become 18th. And I just do not see a world in which Jordan Pickford should be playing Championship football next season. I know he signed the contract extension, didn't he? But I think that would be, you know, mad to see Jordan Pickford in the Championship. He's still only 29. I think he's easily a Premier League goalkeeper. Easily. Like Europa League level goalkeeper. Yes, he might not be one of the big 6 level, and people were linking him to Tottenham. People were linking him to Manchester United in the summer, and it was kind of getting derided, wasn't it? And he is a bit of a... I think Pickford's a bit of a throwback player. For me, he's like a bit of a character. Like, he's a bit unique, and I don't think you see loads of them nowadays in modern football. Back in like the early 2000s, there were loads of players like Jordan Pickford who were a bit like bizarre in their mannerisms and kind of flying around and making symbolic gestures and stuff like that.
He's got a kind of Jens Lehmann vibe to him.
Yeah, and you know, like he again kind of gets like hammered online a little bit for having these mannerisms. You know, when he makes a great save, he kind of gives it a little bit, doesn't he? Or when he gets into the face of his back four a little bit. It's kind of funny, I think, and it's just who Jordan Pickford is. I don't think it takes away anything from his goalkeeping ability, which we've seen both for England be absolutely exceptional. You know, he hasn't put a foot wrong for England, and for Everton has effectively kept them in the division now for 2 seasons with some absolutely monumental saves in big moments towards the back end of seasons when they've been playing terribly, and he's managed to scrape to a 1-1 draw or a 1-0 win. You know, he's pretty much consistently been a post-shot expected goals positive goalkeeper in a defence that's been crap for years now. Like, I think Pickford should be playing his football at a higher level than Everton, personally. I mean, this is a keeper that's been facing on average of 5 shots on target per night every single season he's been at Everton, and he's been very, very consistent in his save percentage.
I agree in terms of he should be playing in Europe. I just kind of wonder what club it would be. Like, really, I think the most likely club before they obviously signed Sanchez was Chelsea.
I think Brentford would have been a good step for him. Like, I think Brentford are a much better placed side right now than Everton.
But they've almost kind of already bought their keeper in, right? Like, it felt like every club where he could have gone to now don't necessarily need him.
Yeah, even like Brighton, they bought in for Bruges, and I can understand that.
And I'm not sure he plays the football for those teams.
Yeah,
like, he's not that kind of keeper. He's quite a traditional goalkeeper.
He's quite accurate with his long ball delivery, though.
But those teams don't necessarily.
But Brentford with David Raya were fairly direct to Ivan Toney last season.
Yeah, but they're not going to be doing that this season because they don't have Ivan Toney.
I don't think that would have been the right move.
It's a different kind of football.
But, like, I think he could play that. I think he could play at a level of a team like Brentford who are competing for the top 10.
I kind of think, though, Everton... I sort of am quite bullish about Everton this season as well, though. Like, I don't think Everton are, like, really beneath him or whatever. I think Everton actually quietly had an excellent transfer window. They needed to get forwards, and they went and got a bunch of forwards. Like, it's a good move for them.
Looks good.
They had a really good window, I think. And I don't know. I kind of feel like Pickford is at the right level. Like, maybe he gets too much stick for his mistakes and not enough credit for his successes. But I think he's a good Premier League goalkeeper, and I think Everton should be a good Premier League side. It's just a few mistakes they've made in, every transfer deal over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
No, I know what you mean. And like, I think I just wanted to stick up for Pickford a bit, just because it's almost like become like a bit of a meme, Jordan Pickford. And I actually just don't think he's anywhere near the level of like a joke footballer. Like, I think he's a really good goalkeeper. And if Everton do go down, then he's definitely going to need saving. Like,
that's
cannot
true.
be playing Championship football.
He's clearly a Premier League.
Oh, he'd be snapped up if Everton went down, right? And you'd assume he'd have a relegation clause in his contract.
Yeah.
Maybe, but they weren't particularly in danger of getting relegated when he first signed there. So, like, you never know.
Yeah. My right back, by the way, is a Championship player that I just cannot believe remains.
Does he play for Southampton?
He does.
Okay, welcome.
Yeah, have you got him as well?
I actually got him and slash someone else, but you say you're one.
I just can't believe Kyle Walker-Peters didn't get moved this summer.
Yeah.
Like, of all the names, Lavia, Livramento, Ward-Prowse, Teller, Salisu, Bella-Kotchep, Gineppo, Diallo, how did 26-year-old Kyle Walker-Peters, who is an incredibly consistent Premier League fullback in a market where, Livramento was going for £40 million, not at least have some interest? I didn't even see a consistent transfer rumour that collapsed on deadline day. It wasn't like teams were battling for Kyle Walker-Peters, and this is a player who has been really consistent since arriving at Tottenham Hotspur, from Tottenham Hotspur like a few years ago. He's been very much a progressive carrier of the ball who can dribble really well. In his early days at Southampton, put up very decent defensive numbers. Towards the back end when Southampton was struggling, not so much. But, I just think he's a solid 7 out of 10 fullback, Kyle Walker-Peters, in a market where fullbacks were a little bit in demand.
Especially for his Premier League experience that he has at that age as well. Like, he is somebody that can play right back or even right wing back as well. He's versatile in kind of a 3-back or 4-back.
And there were
formation.
European clubs that were chasing fullbacks that like him.
Oh, well, he was linked to Arsenal late in the window when they were talking about a Timber replacement. I don't know. I think he can be better than a 7 out of 10 for a team that wants to advance the ball through its fullbacks.
He's a great ball
like a Wolves type side. And that versatility I think is pretty amazing as well. Like, as a progressive passer and runner, he is one of the best fullback wingback hybrids that there have been in the Premier League over the last few years, and he was doing it in a crap side. I don't know. I just think he was really impressive, receiving loads of progressive passes as well. Like,
his take on percentage is extremely high, very tidy dribbler.
I don't want to play him like as a proper fullback where he's required to do a lot of defending.
Agreed.
But I also think that's not how you use him. If you're using him that way, then you should maybe reconsider your system. But there's so much talent there, and
when Crystal Palace still running out Joel Ward, who I think is like a great servant, isn't he? And he's obviously underappreciated by the wider footballing fan base. Palace fans love him still, but like Walker-Peters would have been a really good option there. I think it is like Joel Ward's sort of understudy / taking over from him. He is 26 years old now, and he's got a bucket of Premier League experience. So I just think Kyle Walker-Peters is like prime example of this. That I know that Southampton had 180 million pounds worth of player sales in the summer, so you can't really bemoan them trying to keep hold of some of their better players to win the Championship. But given that they went and got smacked 5-0 by Sunderland on the weekend, I don't think Kyle Walker-Peters should be playing down there.
Yeah, I've actually got kind of 2 right backs. I'm playing one on the left because I found it hard to find left backs. I think left backs are so scarce at the moment, to be honest. So I wanted to briefly mention Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who I think has had he's had a bit of a rebirth.
No. What's this?
Under Ten Hag.
Is it a save or underappreciated? Or a bit of both?
I don't think he will ever be appreciated at Man United because he is just not really the kind of fullback that Man United fans want. But I think Ten Hag appreciates him.
Ten Hag loves him, yeah.
Ten Hag sees in him a guy who can defend one-on-one and who can slot kind of into more of a back 3 when your left wing back goes forward, your left full back goes forward. He's somebody who kind of has the defensive output of a defensive midfielder at times. Like, he's just not really at the right club. It's not quite the right move for him. I think if he were at another side that had like a truly exceptional attacking left back, he'd be maybe more appreciated. Or if you used him as a specialist in European competition, maybe he'll get a bit more appreciated with United back in the Champions League if they do need to lock it down against tough wingers. Because I know his positioning can be shaky, but his recovery pace and his ability to get back and win a one-on-one is fairly outstanding. Like, I mean,
and I think he suffers a little bit from the aesthetic of how he plays football as
he doesn't look elegant.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he is actually, especially in the second half of last season under Ten Hag, improved vastly on the ball and in his dribbling and in his work in forward areas, but still it's kind of clunky, isn't it? It's like heavy touch and then another heavy touch and escaping somehow, and it looks a bit bizarre. So I think that kind of, in the eyes of many football fans, holds him back, but he's taken massive steps, and I think the reason Ten Hag loves him is because he's clearly got his head down and worked hard. For the first 6 months,
I think he's a smart
did
guy.
not have a look at a sniff under Ten Hag. Ten Hag did not fancy him at all. Then we went away for the World Cup. He went to the Spanish training camp with Ten Hag, clearly worked his nuts off, came back, and then 6 months later, he's Manchester United's first choice right back. So I think he is a very appreciated player by Ten Hag, and please, I think he can't leave United.
And he was a plus dribbler when he came to at Palace as well. Like, he was a good dribbler. He looked like he looked like he was going to be able to do something like that. But when you go to United, as you say, like, it's just less forgiving. It's less forgiving of bad touches. It's less forgiving if you are slowing down the team's possession game by, playing a pass without the right pace or not being able to receive on your wrong foot or whatever it might be. I don't know. I just think if he were playing for a mid-table side, if he were playing for a team like, I don't know, maybe not even but maybe not even a mid-table side. Like, if he were like at Everton, I think we'd be like, what a great asset he is for a club like that. If he was playing for a team that expected to be on the back foot a lot, like, I don't know, Fulham, he'd be so good for them. And I just think, it's the downside of being not quite the right player for the right team. And then the other guy I've got is Tariq Lamptey, who I think has a little bit of Carl Walker-Peters about him. Obviously, he's had his injury problems. I don't really think that De Zerbi likes him that much.
Against Newcastle.
But again, he's a bit of a relic of a different time where you had slightly more freedom for your wing back to produce magic. Whereas now it's more on the system and the rotations, and that's how you're trying to advance up the pitch. So you don't necessarily need that one guy. It's kind of like he's kind of got the Adama Traore thing, where he's a bit of a soloist, I think. But when he was really like flying for Brighton, which was for the 21-22 season, he's 20 years old. Tons of passes into the penalty area, tons of progressive carries, tons of dribbles. Tons of progressive passes received. He was receiving like 9 progressive passes a game. So those are obviously like outlet passes, which normally go to a winger. Yeah. And he was the guy. He was one of the main ways they advanced the ball up the pitch. I just think he's a class player. I think if you put him in a back three side, or if you put him in a side that maybe didn't have outstanding wingers but needed somebody to produce a bit of magic from deep, I think he'd look special again. So I would just like Tariq Lamptey to have a good career, and he's still very young.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And also stay fit. That was one of the things that really hurt him. Obviously, he was getting injured. I had Kyle Walker-Peters at right back. I also had Jed Spence. Obviously, we'll see what happens.
Jed Spence is a great shout.
See what happens with his loan move to
He's kind of
Leeds.
semi been saved.
I think that's a good move for him. I think Leeds is a good club.
Because if you look at their right backs, well, it's Luke Ayling. So it's just literally Luke Ayling at the moment, and so it'll be interesting to see if he can essentially take over from him, which is tough to do considering he's been there for so long. But he is getting on now. So I had Jed Spence there. I do think, he has partially been saved with this loan move. I don't think his future's going to be at Spurs, especially obviously after the amount of money they went and spent on Pedro Porro. So if he has a good year, we might see him get that move on.
And it's going to be interesting to see if he can do it in a back four, because Ange's not going to be playing with a wing back, and Porro's going to have big demands on him now to not be playing as a wing back.
Leeds at the moment seem to also be playing with back four too. That's where Luke Ayling is playing in the back four. So again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. My left back, I've gone for Chelsea's Ian Maatsen.
I've gone for Chelsea's Marco Correa.
Okay, so
I've got a Chelsea player, but
I thought about Cucurella. But and he does essentially need.
I just think he's hated by Chelsea fans, man. He's hated by Chelsea fans.
Basically, he's one of these two essentially.
Maatsen's loved by Chelsea. I don't think Maatsen needs saving because
But he's not going to play at the moment. That's the thing, especially with Cucurella still at the club. It goes Chilwell, Cucurella, Maatsen.
But that's fine. That means he'll probably just get a move for less money next summer.
I honestly think Cucurella might be.
We had a move this summer that he said no to.
I know, but he might get a better move. Like next year, you could imagine a slightly more ambitious or a side that maybe has a better chance of staying up.
And like at least he's loved by the fans, and like I think to a level why Poch likes him. Like Poch was liking him pre-season, wasn't he?
Poch was playing him on the wing as well.
Yeah. Whereas Cucurella is like openly derided by Chelsea fans as this sort of joke footballer because he did have a really bad season, and like that can happen to a player, can't it? But he's just turned 26, I think, a couple of months ago. And the season before at Brighton, he was pretty spectacular. A great great passer of the ball. His attacking output has never been that amazing. You know, it was all right for a season at Getafe, but at Brighton it wasn't that incredible, and at Chelsea still wasn't that incredible. But he was a very good progressive passer in that Potter system. Like, he was able to get on the ball and come inside. He could offer an option at left wing back, left back, and at left centre back. Like, he's not the perfect footballer, but on the ball in the correct system for Graham Potter's Brighton, he was a smart and intelligent option. At Chelsea, where it has been a bit chaotic, isn't it? Lots of different systems, from Tuchel to Potter's to Frank Lampard's. It's hard, I think, when you're a player like Cucurella, who relies on more of a system to get the best out of your passing ability, to then be asked to do different types of things in different types of systems. So, like, I think there is still a player there, but maybe just not at the Chelsea level. Like, I do think he badly needs to get out of that club, though.
The issue is
confidence, and he's just getting hammered every week.
Well, the issue is money, right? Like, Chelsea paid a record fee for a fullback for him, 60 plus. I don't know whether Chelsea are going to be able to accept anything less than 35.
You're going to accept sending him on loan to Man United before you accidentally play him in the cup.
When you pay his full wages, right? Like, a loan move is very different to a full transfer. Like, I think Chelsea will be looking for
and that might well be the case, that he has to get a loan move. But, you know, a loan move would have been a big positive for Marco Correa this season. A big positive, rather than playing 4 games or however many he's going to play in the cup. Like, he's not going to get any minutes in the Prem. Not with Cole.
That's my worry also with Ian Maatsen, right? Ian Maatsen, after a championship.
But how old is Maatsen?
21.
Yeah, and Cucurella's 26, man. He needs to get out of that club.
Yeah. Maybe you could say the same thing with Maatsen, right? He's just had an incredible season at Burnley, in the championship, one of the best wing backs there. Like, he's gone from that to now being third choice on the bench.
But he could have 2 years and then become a starting player, and his career would not necessarily have been derailed by it. It wouldn't have been helped by it, but it'd be fine. Whereas if Cucurella kind of rots on the bench for another couple of years, he's approaching the twilight of his career in one of the most physically demanding roles in football. I mean, he should be playing regular football. He's capable of doing lots of different things. I mean, Maatsen, I don't think Maatsen needs to be rescued exactly. Maybe he will be next summer. But, like, let's see at least how the season goes first. Whereas Cucurella, I don't think he's ever really going to be appreciated there. I don't think he's ever going to be quite right for the system. You've got to try and find a home for him now.
It's tough, mate. The wages he's on, and also the transfer fee, it's going to be a tough thing.
I think with the transfer fee, though, like, you pay like 60 mil for him. Once he's been there for 2 years, you've amortized. I think he's on, what, a 6-year contract or something. So after 2 years, you've amortized, like, 20 mil of that. Then if you get 35 mil back, then you're just about breaking even on him minus the wages. That's okay.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there. My centre-backs.
Go on.
Harry Maguire.
Same.
And Malang Sarr. I actually found
Is he still at Chelsea?
He's still at Chelsea, exactly.
What on
didn't the move fall through for him?
It fell through at the moment, yeah.
Did he not go on loan?
No, still there.
Malang.
There was a great interview. I say great interview. There was an interview. There was a press conference with Pochettino where someone actually asked him about Malang Sarr, and he went, "Who?" Didn't go on the pre-season tour. Hasn't got a number at Chelsea. And he's 24 years old. Like, I think what we come to realise is Malang Sarr right now isn't maybe
when you signed him.
Isn't maybe a he was wasn't really playing. That's what I mean. He's fine. Like, he's a player he's a Premier League quality centre back, in my opinion. He's somebody that maybe isn't quite able to play for a top 4 Champions League club in the Premier League, but could possibly do that in another league. Could easily, I think, be playing for a top 10 side in the Premier League. This is someone who said he's 24 years old and still.
Really?
When he first came through, he was somebody that was really looked at as a bright future, as somebody that could really be one of the top 10 backs in the world.
The top 10 size centre backs, though, they're a really good level. They're a really good level, man. Like Aston Villa's centre backs and Brentford centre backs, they're really solid.
He's a left-footed centre back that is not very easy to come by nowadays. Like, there were times maybe he had a little bit. He didn't work well under huge pressure, and also there were some nights obviously where Chelsea were going through tough times. But he could easily, in my opinion, be playing for a club in a top division very well.
Did he go to Porto on loan?
He went on Porto on loan and barely played.
Which is not a great sign.
Isn't a great sign, but again, he's still only 24 years old, left-footed centre-back. I think was absolutely okay on the ball, a pretty good defender, decent in the air.
He's got amazing physical gifts as well. Like, he's very fast, and he's got a great jump on him.
He has attributes where you think, I think at times he might have even filled in at like left back as well for Chelsea. Like, this is somebody that doesn't even have a squad number now at the club. Yeah, I think you could be picking him up very easily, very cheap.
And like a team like Lyon, for example, like who obviously like lost Luque, but like a left-footed centre back who is capable of defending in the wide areas, which is when he came through. I remember years and years ago in the kind of early FD days, like whenever it was 3 centre-backs, your team you should consider signing for France. Manuel Sarr was always in there. And yeah, I do think, again, if he'd gone to a mid-table Premier League side, he'd probably be much better appreciated. Like, would a team like Leicester have been better off with Sarr or with like Wout first?
Have you got Maguire as well?
I left out Maguire just because I was like,
we're obviously going to pick him.
Yeah. I mean, underappreciated. I just wanted to mention Nacho. He's now 33, so he doesn't need to be rescued. He's obviously won a lot of trophies. Probably totally fine where he is.
Yeah.
But he's been at Real Madrid since 2001. Since he was a kid, and I think I've never really seen Nacho let his team down ever.
Yeah.
Like centre back, on both sides, right back, left back. I just think he's such a reliable performer. He clearly never complains. Every manager who he's ever had has appreciated him. He's even got 24 Spanish caps, which is pretty respectable, I think. But and over 200 career appearances for Real Madrid. I don't know. I just think that Nacho was a starting level centre back for a good side. I think he could have probably been a starting level centre back for at the least a Europa League team, but probably maybe even better.
Yeah. But I kind of love the narrative that you always.
Yeah, no, I do as well. So that's why I'm saying he doesn't need to be rescued. But I feel like when he leaves Real Madrid fans might be the only people who notice and respect what he's done there. The other guy I think is Trevor Chalobah, who I think
almost got moved in the end in deadline.
A buy-in deal, yeah.
And that would have been amazing.
Inter after him as well.
Yeah, and those are such good
Spurs
moves, and to end up with none of those moves is just like such a gut punch. Like,
because is he the 5th choice centre back? Really,
he's so good though. Like, I think playing on the right side, I wouldn't really want to rely on him in a back 4. I think I think that would take some time. But on the right side of a back 3, rated really well for progressive passes and especially progressive carries. He's a big guy. He's surprisingly good on the ball. He's also got great tackle success rate. Again, somebody who I think is really worth having in the squad. But I think if you're a Spurs, he's a guy who's better than a lot of the centre-backs you have.
Definitely,
allows you to flex between different formations as well. I don't know. I just think, and he's homegrown.
Forest nearly got hold of him on the final on deadline.
He would have been a sensational signing for them. He really would have been.
Well, Bayern were looking at him as well to play. This is a guy that also
can
play right back. Can also play DM. People forget about half his whole load.
It would have been a bit of a step back on Pavard, though.
But what if Brighton
he's still
had
very
picked
young
him up
as well?
If Brighton had picked him up and said, well, this is a guy who can play in a back 3 for us, he can step into midfield, because actually what we don't really have in the midfield is like a proper experienced defensive midfielder. We've got a load of guys who work hard, like Milner and Dahoud, and we're hoping
Baleba.
That Baleba will be kind of a star. But Baleba's a kid and has barely played. Like, having a guy who can step into midfield and provide some defensive output would not be a bad thing to have in that team, and who's comfortable playing possession football. I just think
Chalobah's a good shout.
Chalobah is absolutely a guy who should not be on Chelsea's bench. If Bayern are interested in him and Inter are interested in him, Chelsea should be asking themselves, what's our talent ID on this guy doing?
But this is, do you not think slightly like there's a little bit now, obviously I know FFP was created, this is kind of going in a different direction here, but I know FFP was created obviously to help with clubs and stuff like this, but do you not think there is also slightly now getting to a point where clubs are looking at their academy kids and going, well, you're just going to be pure profit. Profit. And maybe this is more so actually just for Chelsea right now.
Chelsea.
But now I feel like there are a lot of academy kids who are getting kind of screwed over because...
Yeah, of course. The issue is that Chelsea now see it entirely as a business model and have just completely taken all the soul out of the academy game, where these players are just products to be sold. And then they buy an academy product from somewhere else because they can amortise that and it will be cheaper than the cost on the
I think they're wrong about that though.
It's like that's basically the thought process, isn't it? And clearly that's not what FFP was created for, and it just does rip the soul out of the club. So I think Chalobah's a good shout. I've got Eric Dyer down, who's not even in the matchday squads now for Tottenham.
But that was because he was nothing like when he went to Bayern.
Well, he was very close to leaving to a number of clubs, I think, but it never happened in the end. I mean, he started 31 games last season, and obviously Ange's gone down a very, very different route where he doesn't see Eric Dyer as a key member of that centre-back lineup. But, he is a 29-year-old, very experienced Premier League centre-back. I think
played it versatile as well.
Huge.
A huge presence, yeah. He's an okay passer.
Henry Hill wanted him at Fulham, right?
Henry. Well, you'd start him over Tim Ream. No offense to Tim Ream, who's had a solid start to the season, but I think I would start Eric Dyer in that position. I think there are a few Premier League clubs that could have taken and done with an Eric Dyer's leadership. So
I agree.
he's not going to get any games for Tottenham this season. I think he's a good candidate. Let's move into the midfield, shall we? Well, I mean, there's one name that has to be there, Calvin Phillips.
I've got Phillips.
I've
got Phillips there.
to have Phillips.
I don't really care.
A player's never needed saving more.
But I'll let you have Phillips. I've got another one instead.
Well, actually, they probably have because he is still winning every single thing available, isn't he? Like, he's just sitting there and racking up the trophies. But
And the wages.
I just don't, with Mateus Nunes arriving as well, Kovacic arriving, Rodri's still there, Rico Lewis has played over him at times.
This was England's Player of the Year 2 years ago, wasn't it?
The only one of those who would be a natural cover for Rodri, though, is Phillips. Like, Kovacic could do it in a pinch, I think, but the other guys are not remotely Rodri types. Phillips is much more of a Rodri type than the others.
But Rodri never gets rotated.
I know, and Rodri never gets injured, which is a bigger problem.
I think 52 appearances last season. I think he played more minutes than any Man City player in all competitions, and that is basically the issue, isn't it?
But if say in 2 years' time, once the new Champions League schedule has taken over, teams just are having bigger squads, they're rotating more, you're seeing more injuries. Maybe then Phillips starts playing, and we're like, maybe
but he'd be 29 by then. And
but I think when he went to Man City, he must have been clear-eyed about it and understood, like, Rodri's there.
Yeah, but I'm sure that
I'm not starting over that.
He might have thought as well that there might be opportunities to play alongside it.
Sure.
As well, and those opportunities just have never come.
But that's on him, and also there's, to some degree, like, you have to impress your manager. There's always a gamble on whether you can do that.
And he's struggled when he's come on.
Not impressed.
He has struggled when he's come on. But, like, I just can't believe he didn't get a loan move this summer. Like, I just can't. I understand that there's maybe not a natural backup there, but there's so many teams he would have started for. So many Premier League teams.
That's undeniable.
And it's a Euros year. I just do not understand how he's got the call up to the England squad. I heard Southgate's reasoning that, we've got no defensive midfielders at all in the squad because of injuries and things, but he's at 300 minutes of football in a year. Like, I can't.
But that explains why he's called up to some degree, right? Because you'd be like, should we have a look at him and just decide, like, is Pep telling the truth when Pep says this guy's been overweight the whole time, or is he actually fine and good enough to play? Like, sometimes it's kind of like Maguire. Like, sometimes you say, we know this guy can perform the role we need him to, and the fact that he's not favoured at his club is kind of irrelevant. We don't play the same system as his club. We don't have the same players in front of him as his club.
Yeah, but
I know what you're saying. Like,
they don't play the same system, I understand, but there's no match fitness there. There's no match sharpness. It's a big problem for like an international tournament. You've got to be fit and ready to go straight away. I just don't get how Calvin Phillips can possibly be selected in the Euro 2024 squad if he's still at City. I just don't see how that happens. How he's keeping James Ward-Prowse out the side.
Yeah, who's had a fantastic start to the season. No, I agree. As I said, I kind of had Phillips in there, but you can have him. I put an extra midfielder there just in case. I've got here Leon Goretzka.
So
have you got Leon Goretzka? Have you?
Okay,
interesting.
I've got Leon Goretzka.
I think also just because he does not seem appreciated by Tuchel at all.
Tuchel hates the guy.
Yeah, he's really not a big fan. And like,
Tuchel was willing to spend huge money on anyone.
Literally, but we were saying just before this shoot about how obviously Bayern are really not looking strong in terms of players in that position of centre back and midfield, right? And Goretzka, I mean, obviously Gravenberch went and moved to Liverpool. Hopefully that will kind of help his career get saved. But Goretzka is an incredible midfielder, someone that's been really, really strong for Bayern Munich over the last 4 or 5 seasons now, but just doesn't seem to be appreciated by, even though he's playing at times, but Thomas Tuchel just seems to keep coming out and
he doesn't play much.
Really not
I was
respecting him.
I was looking at his start since joining Bayern in the Bundesliga: 23, 17, 18, 19, 21. I understand he's got massive injury problems, hasn't he? 26 separate injuries since he joined in 2018.
But it's also that, like, when Goretzka's looked good, it's when he's been a midfielder bursting into the box and trying to score goals. Yeah. And basically, they had Thomas Müller there, who was amazing, and then they had Jamal Musiala there.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at that and you're like, fair enough, like, what are you going to do? But there's definitely a home for him. I think if you had him in, say like Inter Milan sold Barella, Goretzka would be like a perfect replacement. Yeah. Exactly the same sort of player, I think.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Zach that, like, this is more on the underappreciated side that needs to be saved, because obviously Bayern are a super club and going to win another Bundesliga probably, unless Leverkusen keep going on their track. But
28 though, isn't he?
The fact that, like, Tuchel, like, not publicly but effectively publicly is like been so negative about the fact that he doesn't have a 6 and he wants to play someone alongside Kimmich, and it's like, well, I get it. Correct, because
wages are a problem as well.
Yeah,
though,
he's
because
on big money.
Yeah, because he joined for free. So when he joined for free from Schalke, he got notoriously huge wages. So now it's just hard to shift him.
Yeah, and he started all 3 Bundesliga games this season. They've looked a bit sus, haven't they, Bayern? And, Conrad Lima, they looked better at the weekend when Conrad Lima came on as right back to replace Mazraoui. So I think...
Who also could be saved.
That's not a terrible shout.
Lima, Mazraoui, there are loads of players in that squad where you're like, he would do a job for almost any club.
Yeah, very true.
Can I do a midfielder?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that right? I've got Frankie de Jong.
Whoa, Pat! What?
I think Frankie de Jong...
He's their best midfielder.
I know, but I just think that, nobody really cares. and I think that with de Jong, there's a little bit of Rooney syndrome about him, where people are so annoyed by the things he's not that they don't necessarily appreciate the things that he is. I think that Frankie de Jong... His defensive output has steadily gone down there, but he is one of the best midfield progressive passers in the world. Yeah. It is as simple as that. He's a huge ground coverer. I don't know. I would like to see him in a side where he was not... He also immediately, pretty much, became second fiddle to Pedri. Now in that midfield, if you were to ask Barcelona fans to talk about their favourite players in the midfield, it's Pedri and Gavi, and then it's De Jong.
I think De Jong has clawed back a lot of supporters, though, since that Manchester United failed move.
People like him, but he's not celebrated. He's not a player who they're like, oh, put him on the bench, no one cares about him. But he's not a guy who, Barcelona fans, I think of as one of the stars of their team, really. And I think that if you'd had him go to a Man City, or if he were at a team like Man United, who could do with that kind of game controller in midfield, he actually profiles as a much better version of the guy you signed this summer, Sofian Amrabat. I think that instantly people would recognise him for the player he was at Ajax, where he was just this incredible ball carrier, this amazing press-resistant kind of dervish in midfield, who was capable of moving his team up pitch, who was capable of controlling tempo, who was capable of dropping between the centre-backs. I don't know, I just think De Jong is one of those guys, he just feels like Pogba in a way, where he was a guy where we were like, he's going to be the next great midfielder, and he's ended up being a very good midfielder for a good side. But I don't know if he'll ever win a Champions League at Barcelona. In fact, I don't feel like he will.
At the moment, I don't see Barcelona in a position to win a Champions League playing him alongside Oriol Romeu.
But could he be playing the Kovacic? Could he be playing the Kovacic role at Man City? Of course he could. He'd be amazing at it.
Definitely.
Barcelona will also be asking for a big amount of change.
Sure.
But let's not forget, it was only 12 months ago that they agreed a £55 million fee with Manchester United.
Things change very quickly.
And obviously things change. And I do think to a level that Barcelona fans have come round to loving him and that he is a key component of that side now. But, it was only 12 months he was out with the bathwater. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily sure about that one. I have to say I think Frankie de Jong doesn't need saving. I think he's probably at the right club right now.
Ooh. That's generous.
So I've got 2 other ones that I'm going to say at the same time because they're kind of both in the similar situations. One is Emile Smith-Rowe.
I've got him as well.
At Arsenal. And the other is Curtis Jones at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Somebody who obviously had a really good end to the season last year. Actually had a decent pre-season for Liverpool too. But I just don't think it's ever going to be fully appreciated enough to become a starting member of that Liverpool squad. The same kind of can be said, I think, for Emile Smith-Rowe. Both have had injuries, Emile Smith-Rowe more so than probably Curtis Jones, and obviously do both probably play slightly different positions in terms of how they would best fit into each other's sides. But I think they're both just really underappreciated and could easily be playing for a club at the same level, possibly, for a rival, maybe. But honestly, we saw the rumours of Chelsea looking into Emile Smith-Rowe, and he probably would have fitted straight into that side. If it wouldn't be a shock.
Where for you? Where would he have played for you?
He could be playing exactly where Cole Palmer played against.
But as soon as Nkunku's fit, Cole Palmer's not going to play.
But he could play onto the left. No, there is so much. I mean, nobody has a guaranteed position in this Chelsea side. But Chelsea might be is a rough thing to say. There are other teams as well that have been obviously super interested.
The rumoured Brentford interest would have been quite
Villa were interested as well at one point. The same could be said for Curtis Jones. You spoke about midfielders. You spoke about midfielders that at Brighton. Curtis Jones could be fitting into there pretty easily.
I think Emile Smith-Rowe's been a bit unlucky this summer as well, man. the signing of Kai Havertz, obviously last summer Fabio Vieira, Ødegaard can also play in there, and he also kind of wants to play wide, doesn't he? A little bit, Emil Smith-Rowe. I'm not sure what his best.
I think he would want to play that Havertz role, and I think he'll probably get a chance. Like Arsenal this season,
a lot of games.
I think people talking about them like trying to win the title this season, I actually don't really think that's true. I don't think that Arteta's necessarily thinking that, and I think it's kind of
he is, Pat.
I think everybody's saying that. I'm sorry, you're stupid. Like,
Pat, he is thinking you can win the title this year. He's been in a competitive title race last year, and he's spent
with no serious European football. Like, I think that Arsenal's goal this season should be to show that they can get relatively close to City. It should be to stay in the top 3, but basically in the top 4, while having Champions League football to contend with. Arsenal have got to adapt to that. Arteta's not managed in the Champions League before. It's going to be much more taxing for them. What Arsenal need to do this season is stay in the Champions League places while having a decent run in the Champions League. So I think if Arsenal ended the year with like 3rd place in the league and they got to like the quarterfinals of the Champions League because they've got quite an easy group, that would be a successful season. I don't think fans would see it that way, but I think Arsenal have got to look at it that way and hope to win the title next year. Like, obviously, if you get a chance to do it this year, great, but I don't think that's likely to happen, and I think it's much more important you adapt to a new workload. So it's possible there will just be chances for him, especially because Havertz...
But is Fabio Vieira ahead of him in the pecking order now?
But Fabio Vieira, I think, is competing for a different role. I think Fabio Vieira is... He's coming on
in that similar
yeah, but that's because you're needing goals at the moment. Whereas I think that if you're talking about starts later in the season, Fabio Vieira would be competing with Ødegaard for starts. Whereas I think that Smith-Rowe will be competing with Havertz.
And you've got Trossard can play in there as well.
I know, but I just think Trossard is more preferred as a different kind of striker option or as a proper winger. I think Smith-Rowe will be thought about as this kind of like advanced age.
Yeah, because he's goal scoring numbers in that 21-22 season.
Yeah, I mean, he was out over his skis and Arsenal were pretty bad.
Yeah, well over the top, yeah, but it would have been fun to see him at Brentford.
I think Brentford would be sick. I mean, I've got Rodrigo de Paul, who, I don't think he necessarily needs to be rescued, but there was a time where pretty much everybody really respected Atletico Madrid's players. Like, people would talk constantly about, like, this guy deserves more appreciation, that guy should get a big move. And I think Rodrigo de Paul, despite having a successful year, got a load of, like, criticism last year. He certainly did at the World Cup. He ended the year with 2 goals and 7 assists in the league. Obviously, he won the World Cup. 9 progressive passes a game last season, which is just like out of this world, and 4 shot creating actions, which for a midfielder is incredible. He's a guy who, if you dropped him into that Kai Havertz role at Arsenal, if you dropped him into the Mount role, you know, the role that Mount has been struggling in for United early this season, I think he'd be really impressive. He's capable of playing out wide. He's a good dribbler. He's a good ball progressor. He's clearly a smart player. He's hardworking. Rodrigo de Paul, I think, has been pretty much underrated his entire career.
I always think that Rodrigo de Paul is like the embodiment of like the Atletico. Like, he is that physicality in their midfield as well at times, isn't he? Like, he is a bit of an enforcer.
But that's why I think that he'd do really well in the Premier League. Like, he's got the capability of doing all that while actually being surprisingly silky on the ball. And you look at the way that people are losing their minds for someone like Eberechi Eze right now. Rodrigo de Paul is kind of a similar player in that mould with actually a bigger defensive work rate. So I don't know. I would have liked to have seen him go to maybe a more progressive club, but I like that Atletico are a bit more expansive right now. So maybe
they're flying.
Maybe he'll get credit. I also think Dani Ceballos you could put in here. Dani Ceballos got like 1,500 minutes last season for Real Madrid, and Real Madrid were good. And he shows up 2nd or 3rd in every metric for them. Defensive output for progressive passes. You know, he's behind like Kroos.
Did he stay at Madrid?
I think he did.
Or did Dani Ceballos stayed at Madrid.
Because I know that Ancelotti likes him. Yeah. Ancelotti gave all the rotation players big minutes last season. Again,
on the ball, he's a monster.
He's not going to complain about being there, but when he was at Arsenal, like over time, Arsenal fans really, really turned against him. And I don't know why. I think he's just a good midfielder.
Yeah. I think it's because he's so slow, man. I'm convinced there is like a certain thing where
we saw him play against Burnley a couple of years ago when he was on loan at Arsenal.
That was his first game, I think.
It was,
and he was out of this world.
Incredible.
But there is a thing where like if a player just kind of like just can't get to balls and things, it does become.
But then you look at someone like Rodri. Rodri's really slow.
But it's like the Jorginho problem. It's the Jorginho effect.
I know, but I think that's where I think he needs to be rescued in the sense that he needs to go to the right team with the right system. You know, look at Granit Xhaka. Granit Xhaka is unbelievably slow and did nothing defensively last season, and yet had a great year and everyone loved him. And
top of the Bundesliga as well now.
Yeah, exactly, because he's appreciated and he's understood for what he is, rather than people trying to crowbar him into being something he's not. So I just think that Ceballos, if he went to the right team, would be a lot more appreciated. And every time he's gone to a club, he's basically done what he's been told to do.
Yeah.
And he's done it to a pretty good standard. And again, fans are annoyed about what he isn't. They don't appreciate him for what he is.
Forward lines, then.
So you just do the whole front three?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone
Mine's
for
horrible.
Ugo Ekitike.
I've got Ugo Ekitike.
Did you guys share notes or something? It's
No,
crazy.
No, but bloody hell, this poor lad. I mean, I do feel sorry for him.
Oh, do you though? 'Cause also
Bradley
at the same-
Barcola coming in.
But
and
also at the same time, right?
disaster,
Like,
innit?
if you went,
Luis Enrique hates him.
did we not all just see this coming? Like,
We did, but
when
not
he
to this
first
level, I
joined.
think. I don't think anybody necessarily saw the arrivals of Kolo Muani and
but he also
Gonzalo
joined,
Ramos
Gonzalo
and
Ramos.
Bradley
But
but he
Barcola
also
and
joined when
Ousmane
they had.
Dembele.
He also joined when they had Messi and Neymar.
Yeah, of course, and he was going to
Yeah,
be the
but
backup to those
Yeah,
three,
exactly.
wasn't he? Now he's probably sixth choice forward option.
And he's a proper forward in a way that those guys are like not. He's
And
a striker.
they were desperately trying to flog him to Frankfurt as part of the Kolo Muani deal and trying to say to Frankfurt, we want 25 million
Yeah.
euros for him. Frankfurt didn't really want him. Then they tried to flog him to Zenit and that 40 million euro fee was agreed. And he said, I don't want to go out and live in Russia. So then he said he tried to agree the deal with Crystal Palace to come on loan,
Yeah,
and
should've been
PSG
sick.
refused to allow him to leave. And now he's just literally in Siberia with Luis Enrique.
He had such a good start as well to his career in Ligue 1, man. Like there's 14 goals and assists in 21-22 is no mean feat.
He's, he's very slight though. Like when Palace were interested, I was thinking like you're gonna ragdoll.
He's very young though, and he's quite lanky. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I think and you know people. Though he's very tall, people said the same thing about Alexander Isak. You know, when he was coming, because he is like such a kind of slender guy.
True.
But the good thing about Ekitike is that probably he'll sit on the bench for a year. He'll get a bargain basement move next summer, and he's young enough that it won't matter
And he'll
too
be good.
much.
Yeah,
It'll be
like
good.
you'll go to like Leipzig or something for about 10 million euros.
Funny you talk about Leipzig because my other player almost went to Leipzig
point.
in the summer. Yusufa
Have
Moukoko.
you got the same front line? I've got Ekitike, Makoko, and Harvey Elliott.
I've got Jane Sancho. No, I've got Yusufa Moukoko. Just doesn't seem to be kind of trusted and liked by Terzic, to be honest. Doesn't want to start him. Obviously, they went and brought in Volkrug from Werder Bremen as well up top, and he now seems to be the other guy to get a lot of minutes. He only got just over 1,000 minutes last year, but still got 7 goals and 3 assists.
He's still only 18 though.
Yeah, but he's
That's quite a lot of minutes for an 18-year-old.
he went to the World Cup. Like,
how many
he
minutes
looks fantastic. Like we were talking about 18. Jude Bellingham was playing
How
for
many minutes
Dortmund
did Evan
week.
Ferguson get last season? Probably around.
How many
Like
minutes? Did
1,000,
How many
1,200
minutes did
maybe.
Jude Bellingham get for BVB?
Yeah, but Jude Bellingham, we can't be comparing. I don't think anybody on the planet to Jude Bellingham right now.
Okay,
And when Jude Bellingham was
But
18, you know,
you see 18-year-olds get more than 1,000 minutes a season, Joe. You really do.
we do. I agree, but we're talking about Evan Ferguson, and I've got Makoko, so I'm kind of arguing against myself here. But we see Evan Ferguson being the most highly rated young striker in the Premier League. People talking about for 150 million pound moves. He got 1,100 minutes or 1,200 minutes last season, so a similar amount of minutes to Makoko.
But do
So,
you not
like-
sit there and think, like, I think you can argue that Evan Ferguson could get more minutes.
And the age profile of the league is different.
Yeah,
The Bundesliga is overwhelmingly younger.
I think the issue for Moukoko as well is the idea that they've just brought in another striker who would
Yeah.
eat up those extra minutes that he could have got
and it's
this
how
year.
they're playing under Terzic, isn't it? They are clearly playing with much more of a focal point. Seb Allet starting most weeks with a free off him in Julian Brandt, Marco Reus, and Adeyemi, or whoever else gets rotated in there. And you'd have to say, you know, Doniel Malen, you'd have to say when Haller drops out, if they're going to play that 3 in behind or they're going to play 2 wingers off a focal point, it's probably going to be Fulkrug who gets given those minutes. So Makoko might have to pick up minutes wide, which it's not terrible, but like, is that? But he signed a new contract, man.
He's
Like,
young enough that it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But
it
he signed a new
doesn't
contract,
really
but
He just
there
needs to
was-
get game time. I do think 1,000 minutes for an 18-year-old
But
is
the fact he's already talking to other clubs, I think, can show that he's definitely.
He nearly got a
thinking
move
about
on
the
deadline
future.
day, didn't he?
Yeah, RB Leipzig was apparently close. So we'll see what happens for him. But and maybe he'll give it. You know what might happen? He might just give it. Well, obviously he has to, but he might give it these couple of months till January, see where he is, and maybe have to try and force something through there. Because I do agree. Yes, it is maybe a little bit crazy to compare people to Jude Bellingham, but he is 19 in November. And players now know that
he was scoring goals at 16.
Starting. Yeah, like I still remember when he first came through, and he was like 14, and he'd played in like the under 17s or under 18s, and it was ridiculous. Yeah. There's a bright future for him. I think he deservedly understands that he should be getting more minutes than he is.
Who's your front three?
My front three is just all greatest hits, really. Kelechi Iheanacho. Get him in.
You've loved Iheanacho for years.
10 goal involvements last year, 0.8 XG. In fact, 2 out of the last 3 seasons, he got over 10 goal involvements in the league. And the other year, he got 9.
He was in talks with everyone for ages.
You know, in the last 3 seasons in the Premier League, he started 40 games and he's got 33 goals and assists.
Yeah.
Like, what's he going to do? He's a guy who takes...
He does go through serious purple patches, though, Kelechi.
But the purple patches tend to be when he comes into the side and then he gets dropped. Before he loses form, he just gets dropped.
There must be a reason, though. There's got
I guess so, but like, I think one of the problems is that, like, he has always been that kind of second striker. He's like a 9.5. You know, he gets over 3 shots a game, which is great. He also gets kind of 1.6, 1.7 key passes. So he kind of wants to play in the hole. He maybe doesn't quite have the physical presence you want from like an out-and-out centre forward who starts every week. But I don't know. I just thought for like a team like Brentford or something they could have done with this. Even a team like Everton, I'd have been interested to see what they did with him, because he could play with a Calvert-Lewin if he's fit, and he could come in for him if he's not. I think he'd be great for Brighton as well, because he's got a lot, I think, of the same match intelligence as someone like Danny Welbeck, and also can be a facilitator. I just don't know why he's not starting somewhere, like whether in Germany or France or somewhere, but like 10 goal involvements, like in very limited minutes. Like, what's he going to do?
I wonder about his wages.
What's he going to do?
And like, he's one of the players at Leicester where he would have joined when they would have never maybe even thought about putting a relegation clause in their contract. You'd like to think maybe professional clubs in general do just put it in.
Forest would have been a really fun move, but then would he have started over a Wonyi?
But he could play with a Wonyi, but probably not. Like it's just not the way they play. I mean, even when you look at Wonyi's goals this season, like he's scoring counter-attacking goals, and Iheanacho I think can run a counter-attack, but not get on the end of the counter-attack. Maybe
Brentford.
Who else did you have in there?
I've got Odsonne Edouard. I don't know if he needs
started the season really well.
Odsonne Edouard at the start of the season, basically he's been like a 2-shot a game player since he's gone to Palace. First few matches of the season, 5 shots a game.
Yeah, he's got most shots of any player in the Premier League, I think, this season, Odsonne Edouard.
Palace in general, though, Eze was taking a ridiculous amount of shots.
I also think you could put, Mateta in this, but they've never really seen...
Did you see the Mateta assist at the weekend?
I didn't.
Oh, he's glorious. It's like hit up to him, and he like uses his back to it's like a back flick off the centre into the path of Eze, who like slots it home. Got to watch the Mateta assist there, honestly.
But they've never seemed convinced by either of these guys. You know, like whichever one is starting, they're not really happy with him. Obviously, they were looking at Ekitike. They also looked at following Balogun. They've kind of made it very clear all along that they want a different striker. And I do think that Edouard, I don't think he's a spectacular player, though if he keeps up 5 shots a game, he will have a spectacular season. But I think he's good enough to just be an undisputed starter for a decent side. I think he's
Hamill's finally come true.
He's pretty solid on the ball, he's just a nice player. The other guy, again, doesn't need to be rescued, but Gabriel Jesus.
How does he need to be rescued?
Have you heard the way that Arsenal players talk about him? Have you not seen that George Wright? George Wright in our group literally talks about how Arsenal have to be in for like Evan Ferguson next summer. Like Arsenal fans last season were going on and on and on about they loved him for like the first month of the season, and then it was he's not very clinical, is he? I'm sorry, but the clinical striker is a myth that has been made up. Like you need to get over that belief. It's a silly belief. There are like 3 players in the world.
I'm joking.
One of the most clinical strikers in the world is not a striker, it's Heung-min Son. He's a guy who scored at like 1.5 times XG for his whole career. But like these kinds of players tend to score in patches. Like it is just how it goes. And generally speaking, they tend to average out to about the kind of shots and XG that they get. And Gabriel Jesus, he made Arsenal's attack better. He was 4th in the league for non-penalty expected goals and assists per 90 last season, like 0.8, which is crazy stuff. Like he adds so much intensity. He's incredibly strong on the ball. He can dribble. He can drop wide. He never complains. He just seems he's a phenomenal player who elevates that Arsenal side. And Arsenal fans, about 6 months after he joined, were like, "Well, we should have got a target man." They were still talking about Vlahovic, who was crap last season. I cannot overstate how terrible Vlahovic was last season. Awful player. Like they were. Then Nketiah comes in. They're like, oh, Nketiah, he isn't clinical either. It's like that was the only thing that people said in his youth. They were like, well, at least Nketiah is clinical. He doesn't do anything else. He starts doing other things. People are like, it's not clinical. Like, I just think like with Gabriel Jesus, like
you think he's underappreciated.
He's the best hold-up man in the league.
Well, that's a big claim.
Best back-to-goal striker in the league.
Because Tony's banned.
No, because I actually think like Tony amazing, and particularly his like work aerially, like much more dominant than Gabriel Jesus, no doubt. But when the ball drops to the floor for Gabriel Jesus, you cannot get him off it. It's impossible to get him off it. He spins you, he turns you, he's stronger than you. His footwork is better than you can possibly imagine. I think he's the best back-to-goal striker in the Premier League.
And I just think that like it's no coincidence that like when he arrived, Arsenal suddenly played like a much better side. The attack clicked in a way it never had before, and he'll probably get some wing minutes this season for Arsenal. It's not that he needs to move on to another club, of course, and I think Arteta appreciates him. Yeah. But I think Arsenal fans are still in this zone where they're just like, they're in love with the idea of getting like a big physical centre forward, and they have got a physical centre forward. He's just not big. Like that's all it is. I think he needs like a really strong goal scoring patch to get some haters off his back, because right now, whoever's playing out of Jesus and Nketiah, half of the Arsenal fan base will be whining about them, and I don't understand because both of those guys, I think, are really good.
Yeah, he is amazing. I think, like you say, the issue is that he has been like a big XG underperformer, even at City.
Yeah, but I think but there's only so big, because the thing is, his numbers are so lethal that even if he underperforms a little bit, he's still going to outscore basically any striker that Arsenal can get hold of. Like, who is there in the world who would be better for Arsenal playing the role that he plays and would be more clinical? I don't think there's anyone. Like, there's no one Arsenal could get. There are guys who you could say that guy's more of a conventional centre forward. They often tend to get a lot of hate as well, like Lautaro Martinez, who is also not as good at the hold-up play. Like, players are always going to be some kind of trade-off.
Yeah.
And I'm just sick of teams like whining about the players they have who are actually like top-class performers who raise both the floor and the ceiling.
Football fans are so fickle where they're never happy with whatever kind of guy they've got up top. They can always have. They think there's always someone better, and especially when you see
through the middle.
Well, this is the thing. Especially when you see like Haaland do what he does for Man City. Everyone's like, well, why can't we get the striker that does that then? Why can't we have
impossible?
And I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Why can't we get an historically amazing?
I agree.
He'd be the greatest striker that we've
Pat
ever
mentioned
seen
something there. Haters. Jadon Sancho's biggest hater is his own manager. Eric Ten Hag.
I disagree with
that. I feel like
man.
it's his own club's PR.
Or PR, yeah. I feel like over the past few weeks,
with that statement from you there.
Over the past few weeks, it does. Like he obviously mentioned about being scapegoated, and you've seen a lot of things come back and forth.
Again,
some of the stuff that's come out over the last couple of days about him is really poor, really poor.
But United aren't necessarily in control of that. I agree. Manchester United, as a top level management, has been poor as a club for years. Decades.
It's having its worst year.
Eric Ten Hag, I don't think he could have done an awful lot more to protect Jadon Sancho last year. He took him out the limelight for a long period of time, and every single press conference I sat down and watched Eric Ten Hag, he supported Jadon Sancho and was just backing Jadon Sancho to the hilt.
I still believe that he should have got some of the minutes that Anthony's got. It makes no, and I agree that okay, mate. What has he done to? What has he done to?
I
maybe
think we can all say that potentially is the case, but we don't see what Eric Ten Hag sees on the training ground. He might be absolutely phoning it in on the training ground. You can say that about any of these players. Might be working his nuts off.
You can say that about any of these players.
Like Jadon Sancho, I think has got the potential to be a star player, but has so far been unable to produce, especially when he's played on the right. He has been miles off it when he's played on the right. His best role for United...
Is he on the right at Dortmund?
Yeah, sometimes. But his best role for United by a mile has been playing on the left. And has he at any stage shown that Marcus Rashford should be dropped for him? I don't think he has, man. I think at times Garnacho has shown more on that left-hand side than Jadon Sancho. So... You're not like people keep saying, but play him on the right. But does this not fit? He has never played on the right.
So you're agreeing with the general thing that he needs to be rescued.
Needs to be saved.
Yeah, but Joe's disagreeing with you saying his biggest haters Ten Hag.
Yeah, I don't think it is Ten Hag.
It was a bit of a segue.
I think Ten Hag has supported him. I really do.
But the point being is he needs to be saved. He needs to be saved. Like, this is a guy now who you saw him put the thing out just saying he wants to go play football. Like, every now and again we see it happen for a lot of footballers that kind of come out and say that their aim now is to play football. I just think I said it on my vibes that I think we can't bash players. I know there's ways about going it, and maybe you didn't go about it in the exact right way. But we can't for years go about players need to be more open. We want to see players, so on and so forth. And then go when he made the decision to put a statement out. What are you doing? That's the wrong thing to do.
Felt much more like Sancho was suffering a character assassination and wasn't willing to sit by and let it happen. And I think, fair enough, like, you're not obliged to try and take the high road and just let people tell what you consider to be lies about you. Like, I think that's completely understandable.
Yeah, and I think, look...
But I do think it'd be in United's interest to find a solution for him, given that he is never going to unseat Rashford on the left. And if after another season it's like, well, we're not going to start him on the right either, and clearly we're not going to start him through the middle because we've got Fernandes and we've got Mount and, you know, we've bought a striker, so clearly he's not going to play a striker. Like, it is in their interest to try and move him on.
I would agree with that. I just think that the statement, I don't think it was I think it was the wrong way to go about it. I understand this idea of supporting yourself against character assassination. I actually thought the words that Erik ten Hag used when you watched that press conference back were, it was a passing comment made about, oh, why is Jadon Sancho not in the squad? Oh, we haven't picked him based on training performances of other players. It was like a passing comment made.
But I think the issue, right, is with the way social media is, Sancho, and he obviously don't know something happened. He wouldn't have seen that. He's just seen it been put into some text form on Twitter.
Yeah,
everyone's talking about
that's fine, but then, you know,
which you can understand how it
can
get blown up.
I think.
Yeah, but you don't. But you're thinking of his statement as a direct response to the Ten Hag thing, whereas actually, I imagine his statement was a response to the public perception of him and the things that people are saying about him, not just Ten Hag. So I don't know. I'm quite sympathetic to him, to be honest. I feel like he's been going through quite a bad time. I can understand if you think that it's maybe not the best thing to do, but for all we know as well, you could say he might have been working really, really hard at training. Like you say, well, he might have been not. Yeah, but we can easily say, well, what if the opposite is the case? And it's just he's never going to start over Rashford because Rashford's literally the only person at Man United who can competently put the ball in the goal. Yeah. I don't know. He definitely needs to be rescued one way or another. And to be honest with you, I would want to get out of Man United right now. I think they're having the worst year I can remember a club having in terms of the public relations.
I've never seen PR like it. It's really just
really bad.
They've made bad decisions at pretty much every turn, and it's been disastrous. So I would leave.
Okay, so those were our players that need to be saved. I think we've done pretty much everybody on the list, right? If you've got anybody you would suggest, let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know which 11 you thought was the strongest. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Goodbye.